So I've been a Pro Max iPhone user for the past couple of years or generations, so 13 Pro Max through 16 Pro Max that I have here. And in the past, it was primarily because there were hardware advantages with it, not just the bigger display size and battery, but like there was different camera capabilities, better sensors, whatever, longer zoom ranges. But with the 16 Pro this year, sort of like I think the 13 Pro and the 11 Pro, the specs are equivalent, you know, besides the display difference and the battery difference. And this year, the display's actually gotten bigger with the Pro models. So with all that said, I thought I would switch to it for a week and share my experience and answer the question, you know, is the Pro model enough to get me to downsize? So the first thing I want to quickly talk about is form factor and just overall size and weight and whatever. It's a treat to downsize because, you know, I'm used to a heavier, more clunky phone that's harder to manipulate. Like I think like physics-wise, this is easier to just sort of throw around, not literally, but I like that. It's easier to throw in your pocket, it's lighter, you know, it's easier on your wrist, you know, so it's something I could definitely get used to long-term opposed to having a bigger, clunkier phone, although Apple plans a big, you know, iPhone 17 Air that's gonna be lighter and whatever, but we'll see about that. But anyway, yeah, this is still, you know, the more compact phone. They sell it for a reason. Not everybody wants a giant phone, and it also has a bigger footprint, which I'll get to with the display, but, you know, for the most part, it, you know, is smaller, and I do enjoy that, and that's why a lot of people, you know, enjoy it as well or go for it. It also allows you to use this phone with one hand more easily, which is the next point of discussion here. And the first thing that comes to mind with one-handed usage is one-handed typing, which I quite miss. I mean, I can sort of do it with my Pro Max, but it's definitely better here, you know, for texting, for Safari, for Spotlight, whatever you're doing. However, I will say it is not a small phone by any means, not like iPhone 5S size, for example, so you're probably going to want to use this sort of keyboard shift feature that sort of shifts your keyboard to the right or left. It makes it a little easier to type, but for the most part, you can comfortably one-hand type, which I really appreciate here. The UI elements are also easier to toggle, like the control center and other apps and stuff, but even still, sort of on the same page as the keyboard, like you're definitely going to want to use the accessibility or reachability features, because while you can kind of shimmy your hand and reach towards, you know, like the control center, for example, the notification center is not easy to, you know, access with one hand. It's not like the iPhone 5S or 5 days where you could sort of one-hand your phone no problem. You know, this is a proper, you know, 6.3-inch smartphone, not like gigantic 6.9-inch by any means, but definitely up there. So, you know, you can use this phone one-handed a lot more easily. Obviously, you know, it's 0.6 inches smaller, which makes it more compact. But yeah, I mean, it's still not like this perfectly tiny, you know, 12, 13 mini phone, which some people have a cult following or love for. So, you know, you definitely get a lot of phone here. Nonetheless, though, the iPhone Pro model here still kind of has that one-handed usage spirit from back in the day, which apparently people like a lot because they buy this phone or this variant. You know, Apple's not discontinuing it like the Plus model, which is kind of sad, but that's another video. And I quite like this aspect as well. But before we continue with the video here, I have a brief message from the people who make this accessory, which is something I use every day with my iPhone setup. Meet the ESR CyberLock Case for AirPods Pro. I've actually been using this thing for months now, and I absolutely love it, since it sports such a fantastic rugged design that makes it easier to grip and pop open with its secure flick lock mechanism, especially when using only one hand. The case also keeps your AirPods locked inside when you inevitably drop the whole ensemble, which I do a lot outdoors and indoors. Again, the case prevents me from losing the individual earpods that would normally fly out at high speed, and keeps the case from getting more bruised and scuffed than it already is. Plus, it works with wireless or MagSafe charging and makes your AirPods case magnetic, so you can stick it on the fridge and the like, which is pretty sick. Last up though, even though the case adds an extra protection layer, it still gives you easy access to the back button, a cutout for the indicator light, and cutouts on the bottom for the charging port and built-in speaker. All in all, this is a must-have accessory if you're an AirPods Pro addict and klutz like me. I'll leave a link in the video description down below if you're interested in checking ESR and everything I mentioned here out. Again, buy this thing. If I didn't have this, my AirPods would be broken, lost, and or gone, you know, either way, so incredible product here. Next up, let's talk about the big bigger display with the 16 Pro here. Is it big enough? How does it stack up to the Max's display? Well, again, it's 6.3 inches this year, up from 6.1 with the previous 15 Pro model, and of course up from 5.8 in the past. I think it's great. It's noticeably bigger when it comes to streaming video, whether you're watching long form on YouTube or whatever streaming service you're using, you know, TikTok, Instagram, whatever. It is a pleasure to use. Definitely bigger than, you know, previous models, even the last gen model. It's also great for two-handed typing. You know, it's good for one-handed typing, but two-handed typing is more my thing, and that's something I like the Max phone for. So it was nice to, you know, sort of utilize that extra screen space here with the keyboard, so you have more room to place your thumbs if you're furiously typing, and that's a big deal to me because I like to do that. This is also great for gaming. I'm not much of a gamer, but you know, I do whip out Minecraft Pocket Edition here and there. And again, if you're a smartphone gamer with an even smaller 6.1 inch or 5.8 inch iPhone, you're gonna appreciate the extra screen real estate here. It makes a difference. Also too, I like how compact the Pro model is if you wanna have your hands all over the display for a first-person shooter or whatnot. But all this to say, the display still is smaller. Don't get me wrong, I do miss the larger display. Like, it isn't comparable. It's 0.6 inches smaller once again. But compared to previous years, it's a lot less noticeable of a hop down or whatever, you know? So if you compare the two in person or you switch to it like I am right now, this is not as jarring. I quite like this. If I had to use this, I'd be pretty happy, opposed to, you know, sort of using the 6.1 inch display on the last gen, and of course the 5.8 inch display in the past. I did like those for a time, but you know, that was a lot more of a jarring, compact experience that I wasn't necessarily ultimately a fan of, but this is a good sweet spot. It sits in the middle, and I think that's why they upped the display size this year. Screen size aside though, what about battery life? Well, it's kind of what you expect. I mean, if the specs are the same, the chip is the same, the display is smaller, the battery is smaller, it's not gonna have as good a battery life. And I definitely noticed that. I don't have any scientific numbers for you here, but I did watch some, you know, really in-depth battery tests, and you get like 2-3 less hours of screen on time. That's to be expected. For me, that's a bit of a problem because I'm a phone addict. I'm always on X and TikTok and whatever, you know, so, you know, if you're a fiend like me, this might be a problem. But like, honestly, if I was a healthier person, you know, and I wasn't on my phone all damn day, I would be able to, you know, make this work. And then some. It lasts all day. You know, with the 3nm Gen 2, you're getting a lot better power sipping. They increased the battery life, I believe, by a margin. I'm going to put it here. It's a significant one. Sort of similar to the way they did that with the 11 Pro. So this is the best performing Pro model we've ever seen, you know, and thankfully the Pro Max is back to where it was. The 15 Pro series was a little messed up with battery life. So was the 14 Pro for whatever reason. But yeah, this is solid when it comes to battery life, especially if you are a normal person who isn't on their phone like 6-7 hours a day. But yeah, I mean, battery life wise, it's way better than it's ever been. And you know, if this phone was my only option, and I don't even say that in like a sort of like, oh, this would be horrible, I'd be able to do this. You know, it would just force me to change my habits a little bit, I'm sure. Last up though, I want to talk about camera capability or performance here. Thankfully this year, it's equivalent across the board, Pro Max to Pro. Last year, the Pro Max had a 5x camera that the Pro didn't. They brought it to the 16 Pro this year, so same cameras. And I love this lens or camera setup. It's phenomenal. I love the way telephoto photos look. I also like having that optical, you know, capability outside or indoors or whatever. Not everybody cares for it, but I like it. At least it's there if I need it or if you need it. So you're no longer compromising that feature for the more compact size. And speaking of which, I love shooting with this thing. It's more compact, it's easier to handle. You can have your hands over or all over the screen more and interact with the UI. It's easier to hold like this and to interact with the camera controls. So shooting photos and videos with this is honestly a better experience, I would say, than the Pro Max, simply because it's just less unwieldy, it's lighter, it's easily maneuverable. But I guess the viewfinder is smaller, the screen is smaller, and of course the battery life isn't as good. So you don't get as many shots or recording time with this, albeit though you can get internal storage for cheaper with the Pro model, so keep that in mind. So it's a trade-off either way. But yeah, I love shooting with this, and I love the fact that the 5X is here too. It is a go-to lens of mine, just aesthetically and also just optically as well. With all this said though, will I be downsizing? Well, if you guessed no, you're correct, and maybe I kind of gave that away in an earlier point here. I was sort of going like, well, I would, but yeah, it's not for me, but it's more for me than it's ever been. Because of the display jump, you know, to 6.3 inches up from 6.1, because the camera, you know, is the same, because the battery life is better. But really what's holding me back is battery. I mean, I love the display on the Pro Max phone, don't get me wrong, but if I had to choose between battery life and screen size, like let's pretend like this got better battery life even though it's smaller, I would opt for this because, you know, I'm always on my phone and I want my phone to be charged. I want to have that extra buffer period. I want to go to bed with like 20-30% remaining. Sometimes I drain this phone completely. I mean, that's how crazy I am. So battery life is a big deal to me. Again, if you're a phone addict, you're probably going to want to opt for a Plus or a Pro Max. The Pro Max specifically has the best battery life, but if you are, again, more mentally healthy, less addicted to your phone, this is going to be fine. And I think that, you know, it has a big enough screen to accommodate most of your needs. It's a nice compact camera as well if it's nicer in your pocket, and it's cheaper, and you can get more storage for it too. So if you can deal with this, and it's a wonderful phone to deal with, I'd go for it. I mean, there's no real crazy compromises here. But again, if you're like me, if you're a prosumer user, the battery life does make a difference, and I gotta stick with this. But again, though, this would be the easiest year for me to downsize. And it was a very pleasant week, more so than in the past if I downsized to, you know, the 15 Pro or the 14 Pro. I did have a stint with the 12 Pro for a minute, but I think it was because the 12 Pro Max was just like not different enough and it was pretty clunky. And I think having a 60 hertz display at that size just was kind of, but that's another video from the past if you want to go watch that. But anyway, that about wraps things up here. I hope this video was helpful. Check out my link to ESR once again. If I can open this, this is a great accessory. I use it every single day of my life. And as always, I'm Noah, and I will catch you all in the next one.